The formatting for the solutions meeting, what I call it, is a bit different from some of our other meetings. You have an agenda before you, and what I will be doing is initially just presenting the challenges for brief discussion, as in 5 minutes. We will allot the Royal Virgin Islands Police Force a little bit of time as it relates to the crime and the increase in robberies, if they have anything to report, etc. Then we will break out into 3 working groups. I find that that's maybe a little bit more productive rather than us going around in circles like we tend to do sometimes at meetings, and then when we leave, we don't have any clear outcomes other than we've talked about the issues, we've beaten them to death over and over. So the idea is we will break out into 3 working groups, where these groups have 20 minutes each to discuss the subject matter, what the issues are, and what are possible solutions. Ideally, we don't want 20 solutions for that particular area, and we want solutions that are community involved and that are workable. I recognize that we've been having quite a bit of challenges in our community. We have our chat groups, we talk about it, we talk. We reach out to government. Sometimes something happens in little steps, sometimes nothing happens at all. I do not want this to be a blame session. I think we've gotten past, at least I've gotten past that stage. I think what's important is, I said something today in one of the chat groups. My mother used to say, are you going to cut off your nose to spite your face? And yes, it is that government is responsible for certain things. Yes, the police is responsible. But at the end of the day too, are we going to just sit around and let things happen and not do anything about it? I have one example which I've shared on the chats as well. And this was the pothole in the road at Road Town Wholesale. I was traveling, everyone kept going back and forth about this pothole. There are 3,000 of us living on the island. Everybody's passing the pothole, they're complaining it's deep. A couple of rental cars actually lost tires, etc. I said, well, okay, if the pothole is still open, when I get back, I will put a cone in the pothole. Came back, still the same thing. I sent David, one of our maintenance employees at Virgin Waterville Rentals, I'm certain most of you know David, to put the cone in the road. He put the cone in the road and he came back and he said, Marcy, you can't just put a cone in the road because the road is really bad. I'm going to get a couple of bags of cement. Chris, don't listen to this, but we got a couple of bags of cement, and he spent Thursday night, he did one side of the road. Another night, he did the other side of the road. And I think that that is very admirable, because we cannot always wait for government to do what we expect them to do. It is obvious that sometimes it is not happening. Some of the key items that I wanted us to pay attention to this evening, bearing in mind that there are probably lots of other things that we could have talked about. We posted the draft itinerary on the community boards and asked if there was any input or whatever. We didn't hear anything from anyone about any other items that should have a priority. So we confined ourselves to these 4: crime and the increase in robberies, infrastructure deterioration, the roads, the potholes, what's happening with the flooding, island beautification, youth enrichment needs. These have been some of the the most talked about items for Virgin Gorda and the areas where we're not, at least in my opinion, some of you may think differently, we're not making as much progress as a community as I think that we need to. So in the absence of that progress, those of you who know me, I tend to try to take matters into my own hands as respectfully as I can. We invited all of the government agencies and the government ministers, etc., to talk about solutions. Some said they would send persons, some said they would be away, some said they're keeping low profiles. So we've continued to move on. So our main topic initially is crime and increase in robberies. I'll have someone from the police department. You have maybe about 4 minutes to talk about that. And then we have another 3 minutes for input from those of you sitting. If you're going to speak, please try to be brief and quick and to the point, knowing that you're going to be going out into breakout groups to trash those issues out, as well as to provide solutions. Once we come out of those breakout groups, each breakout group has to report back. That's why we have the easels and the flip charts. You will elect one spokesperson, and that spokesperson will present the issue that you discuss and a minimum of 5 what I call quick wins, 5 solutions, and then we discuss how we implement it. So may I ask one of the gentlemen from the Royal Virgin Islands Police Force to come up, please?
I'm joined here today by Acting Superintendent Israel Sargent and Inspector Kevin Joseph. So yes, in regards to the recent robberies that we've been having on Virgin Gorda, actually we have had a few also on Tortola, but for VG in particular, we've had 2 so far. One at Leverick Bay, that was the 30th, the 28th, 26th of May, and one at Bath and Turtle some weeks after. We have made some progress in the investigation. We've arrested several persons, questioned, executed several search warrants around the valley. And however, the investigation is still ongoing. We cannot disclose too much information, but the investigation is still hot and moving forward. In regards to the increase, obviously, increase in population, increase in business, it's almost an automatic increase in crime anywhere you go in the world. We're trying our best to implement preventative measures, educate the youths, to minimize and target crime, and we can assure you that we're doing our best to keep the community safe. Ms. Flax?
Do we think that we are staffed properly on Virgin Gorda, given what's been happening with the crimes, if there's been an increase in officers, patrols, etc.?
All right, thank you for that question, Ms. Flax. So yes, since the 2 incidents, we have had some additional support from Tortola. I mean, obviously you'll never get everything that you need, but we have implemented a new armed response unit on Virgin Gorda. That is something that is rather new to us. And we're trying our best to utilize them to prevent crime, do some additional patrols in soft target areas. It's working, I think, and we're trying our best really to get some more resources from the bigger island. And as you know, VG is always the last to get any type of resources from the government.
We can say that in
Yeah, that's feedback. we are trying our best with what we have.
So would you be able to tell us then, as a follow-up, you don't have enough resources. What additional resources would you need in the way of manpower, firepower, and when you say armed response, what do you mean by armed response? I might know, but somebody else maybe wants more clarity.
All right, so armed response, well, it's called Armed Response Vehicle, ARV or ARU, Armed Response Unit, is the officers who are actually trained in tactical means and ways of policing. They're usually armed 24/7 to offer that quick response with the armed resources available to them. So we've never had that on Virgin Gorda. Now we do. It's just a matter of time now that we allocate a vehicle for them, a marked vehicle, to start doing some road stops and searches and so on. We're somewhat limited in utilizing an unmarked vehicle per se at this stage, because it's still in the early stages, and we're trying to make it work as best as we can. Resource-wise, well, we've had several new recruits who are presently in training, several auxiliary officers. So we should be getting a new batch in the next few months, and hopefully we'll be getting some additional resources up there. But that's pending the graduating class from the training school. And we've also had several transferees from the sister islands, from different islands. So we're moving forward, but then again, it takes a minute. It takes a minute.
I would say that some of us remain very concerned about Christmas in July, which is a major event upcoming. Are there any additional plans for support, seeing that the island will be quite full, swollen in fact? That particular weekend, I've always noticed a little bit of concern, especially on the beach at Palm Bay, when persons are out of their villas, and then in terms of traffic control. I know last year we had some challenges. Are we equipped to deal with that? And then I'll turn it over to one or two questions.
Sure. All right, so in regards to the Christmas in July, I've been in constant communication with the organizers, and they've agreed to hire private security and also off-duty officers to assist in the event. Just as last year, we did have one or two officers up on the road to deal with the traffic. It wasn't really a big issue, not similar to the previous year, so we kind of had a little control over it last year. And of course, with the additional resources that we just received, and hopefully by then we should get some additional resources, covering the Valley and North Sound shouldn't be an issue really.
What is the status of the CCT camera system, which I know I put money into a few years ago, but I've never heard anything about whether it's working or not?
Yes, so that's the island-wide surveillance cameras. Yes, they are up and running, functional. I think we just had 2 cameras that had some faults in them over I think late last year. But besides that, all the cameras are actually functional and they're being monitored. So we've utilized them on several occasions to assist with investigations and so on. Yeah.
Good evening. What are we doing to improve the response time of the police? In recent weeks, unfortunately, and as early as this morning, had to call the police about in an incident. This was an accident involving 3 cars and a scooter.
As this morning?
This morning at Gun Creek. Previously, there was a gentleman that we saw lying on the side of the road. Luckily, he didn't die. but the response time when you call the police, we need to work at improving that, because I would call either the 911 or I would call the headquarters in Tortola. They in turn have to call you on Gorda. They have said, oh, but the guys are probably out on patrol and I'm trying to call them on the cell phone. And that happened this morning as well, where maybe while the hill's going, the signal was bad, but we need to find a way to improve the response time. The response time is definitely way too long. From the time it is reported to when you get to the scene. And I'm hearing about the staff as well as that you're on another call. So those are issues that we need to work on, but the response time, we need to try to bring that down to a minimum.
You want to respond to that, John?
I mean, I'm not sure if that was a comment or a question.
Well, it was a question, what are you going to improve the response time from the time you get a call? First of all, the 911 is in Tortola, 494-3822, then they have to call you. And they're calling you on a cell phone and they're not getting through. The gentleman in Tortola today actually had me on one phone and he was trying to call on another. And of course, your call cannot be completed at this time, whatever. So in that time, it could mean that somebody unfortunately could die, be seriously injured, or whatever else happens when we have these emergencies and we need to call the police. So we need, what are we doing to improve the response time? Because this morning it was over half an hour. The other night, that was the night of Miss Teen BVI on the road by Delta. The gentleman, and actually we were there, the ambulance came, I don't know the police ever came, because when the ambulance came, we left. And that took about 20 minutes and the police was never there.
Let me respond to that. Actually, that's so. As you know, normally, as you get a call to respond, takes somewhere between 10 to 15 minutes. That's international standard. North Sound, now where the incident took place this morning, of course, if you're traveling from the valley to North Sound, it's going to take you a good 20 minutes minimum. You and I know that. The solution is actually on the table. However, that's spending, finding resources and a vehicle to reopen the North Sound police station, so that we can have direct response from North Sound to North Sound related matters. That is spending. It's on the table. It's just basically we're just waiting for that additional resources and the vehicle to put it into motion.
And that's the same for the valley as well, because the response time in the valley is not much shorter.
Yes, so now you talk about the call. I'm quite sure most persons in this room and most persons on Virgin Gorda are familiar with the Virgin Gorda Police cell phone number. That's 368-9552.
Yeah, that's the same number that the guy called.
Right. So I'm assuming that this morning when they were traveling to North Sound, you know that there's a blind signal area where, of course, you're not going to get a call. That's the only time that you should be getting that message that you mentioned earlier, that you're out of range or whatever the case may be. But outside of that, you normally get an answer within 1 to 2 rings. But you can call directly to 368 to get quicker access to the staff on Virgin Gorda, because you have to call Tortola, 311 or 911. By the time they call over here, you're losing 1-2 minutes in the process. Calling direct, I think, is the solution. And then response time within the valley, I'm not aware of any reports that we have not responded within the 15-time standard in particular. And if that's the case, of course, officers are not just sitting down 24/7 waiting for a call. Usually they're doing something, they're dealing with a prisoner, they're dealing with the next report. There are circumstances that cause delay, but every circumstance is specific to that particular time when you called. Yes, Inspector.
Yeah, I just have one point to support the Chief Inspector. So there's one other thing we need to take into consideration. when we have one unit to respond to reports on Virgin Gorda, all right, we have to prioritize. So that is also a factor. If officers have other jobs, all right, somebody unfortunately is going to have to wait, all right, and that is how it is, all right. We always have to prioritize. If we have 3 reports, we look at the one that requires immediate response, and the other 2, you know, we have to deal with them when we're finished. All right, so it's just for the officers to communicate that to other members of the public. All right, now listen, we're dealing with this now. We will be with you in due course. Maybe we need to update them. Say, listen, 15 minutes has passed. We're still coming to you. Just hold on. All right, but that's all as it relates to this particular area.
Just a matter of clarification, when you mentioned 1 unit.
Yeah.
What do you mean by 1 unit?
All right. So prior to this, we have beat and patrol, which is the uniform officers. All right. Uniform officers respond to all general reports. All right. Now we do have a CID team. Unfortunately, those officers were, because of short staff, they were actually running shifts. So we did not have a CID team for a bit. They were actually on shift. All right. Now, with the additional resources we've received, we're able to put them back in CID. So it should be better now. All right, moving forward. It's just that we have other issues with vehicles and so on. Our MAC vehicle is not functional right now. All right, and maybe in the next week or so we should have that sorted. All right, so the response time should be better moving forward.
Understand the response time is 15 minutes in the valley and 20 minutes in Northtown?
It depends. It depends. If we have, let's say in a perfect world,
Yes, in a perfect world, standard
we would have 2 units out. And if we have 2 units out, we'll try not to have both of them in the valley. One should be in North South and one in the valley. So the response time should be a lot shorter.
So my next question is, unfortunately, is why don't we have 2 units?
We do not have 2 units because as a territory, we prioritize, all right? And the powers that be within the organization with our stats, all right, supporting their decisions, Ruoton, Tortola, has the priority, all right? The fact that we're almost victims of our own success. Virgin Gorda being low crime, all right, the resources are not really focused for VG, all right, prioritized for VG, but with the increase, all right, we're now able to make the arguments, which we've always been trying to make, that we need to have that here, just in case, all right, it's happening now, so, and we're getting the resources.
So the first question that I have is, I'm hearing a lot of talk about resources and whether we have enough or don't. So I'm curious because I know my mom has a primary school and a daycare, and there is an actual ratio to which she has to stick. I mean, they choose to enforce it very selectively, but she sticks to it. In terms of how many children you're supposed to have per teacher. When you guys speak about resources and how much, because it seems very abstract and imaginary, is there an actual ratio that we operate on as it relates to community policing? Should it be 1 officer for every 500 people? Like, what are we actually basing this on? Because this seems like a very abstract conversation. So I could think we need 100, but somebody else might think we need 2. What is it based on? Is there science to it? Is there anything in principle or in practice that's generally applied? Because that's what I'm really curious about. Otherwise, we're just talking about what we kind of want to see.
Resource allocation, as you're asking, has recently over the past 2 years, we've
adopted a UK pattern of using numbers of crimes to allocate resources. I think that's where your question is really coming. It's not allocated based on ratio of persons residing in a community to how much officers you must have this. There's no formula for it in particular. Although there is something somewhere in some old book, but it's not present right now. Right now, that's what's been adopted. And that's as the inspector mentioned earlier, we have been victims of our own success. Virgin Gorda being the lowest crime community or district in the British Virgin Islands, have caused all the resources to move and go to town. So the focus would have been on the highest crime area in the BVI as per district. And that's basically the answer to your question. So there's no direct resource as per ratio of personnel population.
You have one follow-up question to that last question, and I have my original question. The follow-up question is, based upon what you have said, that it's determined based upon the level of crime that is experienced in the community. Based on the level of crime that we have now, or is experiencing now, would you say we are on the low side, or we are average, or what is your answer to that? Based upon what level of crime we are experiencing now, in PG in particular?
Well, okay, so we're not going to categorize crime right now. If you're referring to robberies in particular, we're up one from last year.
We had one. This year we have 2 so far. I correct, Speggy? 2? So to say that we're totally...
If we're counting the one in school, right?
Oh, right. Yes, so...
That would be 3.
Yes, that would be 3, right. I don't know if you recall that one at the school with the chain, where they tried to take the chain from the boy. It wasn't necessarily an armed robbery, it was a base robbery. But yes, from that angle, yes. But if you look at the overall crime, no, we're still really and truly on a straight path. Barely, nothing significant has really changed. Just that the 2 armed robberies really kind of distorted us. Yeah. But if you look, for instance, burglaries are down. But if you compare it to last year, thefts are down from last year.
Although we still have a bit of a challenge in the response time, like Mr. Shirian said, you would still say our response or our ability to handle those responses is good.
Oh yes. I mean, we've been handling. I wouldn't say it's exactly what we want, and especially in policing, you never really get a perfect scenario or perfect amount of resources or a perfectly functional vehicle. That doesn't exist in our world. We just do the best we can with what we have at the time, and usually it's good enough. I can say that it's usually good enough.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation. My last question is, you said, based upon you're implementing some mitigating measures, particularly for youths. Can you get some context on some of those mitigating measures, and how can we as a community help you in those efforts?
You can start by educating the youths.
I think most persons who are responsible for certain crimes like burglaries of villas, tourist-related areas, armed robberies. Some may get $1, some may get, like the last armed robbery, what they got, $250. I don't think they truly understand the negative impact that they have on their own country when it comes to the international media, the tourist industry. I think educating them as to that significant impact. You gaining $200 or $250 could never outweigh the kind of negative media that you have out there, the amount of potential tourists that you may have had lost because of that particular act that you did. So maybe having conversations with the youths, the groups, schools, educating them down that line, I think would be very, very helpful.
And what are you doing?
Yes. So right. So what we have the community policing team. Initially it's based in Tortola, but we have one of the officers up here. So we've been visiting schools frequently, and doing some minor, small presentations. Persons that come into contact at the police station with the police for whatever particular reason, we sit down and we have a little chat and share this information with them.
Who is the community officer? I'm just asking. Who's the community officer?
Well, it's WPC Baptiste, Natalia Baptiste. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her.
No.
Well, we had to put her on shift to.
Okay,
Yes.
so when we get into the breakout group, maybe that is one of the solutions that we look at, because all of us in this room should know who that community officer is. And when we're looking at youth, maybe it is not only up to the police to educate our youth, maybe it is up to our youth as well to educate our youth. Jana, you've been involved in tourism, so you know the importance of that. So what better than youth talking to youth? Mr. Ross, one question, and then we definitely are moving on.
Okay, what I'm concerned about is I'm not seeing much community patrol. That police walk in the streets from time to time in different areas where you might have a number of people assembled. I'm not seeing that. I used to see it before, but I don't know if we've evolved to understand it. So I'm asking that question, and well, in strategic areas such as where there are a lot of crowds and maybe pass through the various bars and, just police presence sometimes make a difference. And there is one other point before I get back to Mike is, the officer to my left mentioned about the statistics in relation to crime. And Gorda, is one of the lowest, or is the lowest in that area. And as a result, maybe some of the resources were moved away. So I'm asking if the potential criminals, wouldn't they notice that? Because if they said what brings you there is what should keep you there. So, in moving our resources from Gorda, that might encourage people to say, okay, there is a slackening enforcement, and so they could do what they want to do. And so on. There's another issue, which is noise pollution. I'm asking what is done to deal, what is being done to deal with that. This is my question.
In terms of the numbers, as Chief Inspector Kaduro alluded to earlier, we have stepped up with adding resources to Virgin Gorda. We actually saw the need, and that is why now we have the ARM unit here in VG. And as he said, we are going to have more resources coming to VG pretty soon.
Yeah, I suspect when you say the noise, we're talking about scooters?
Noise in general.
Noise in general. Oh, okay, so since I've been back to Virgin Gorda, which is about 5 weeks now, I've had a couple complaints about scooters and the noise that come from them. So, everything that we plan to do, everything that we've implemented and will implement, connected. So, having the additional resources as well as marked police vehicle operational, we will be able to pursue addressing some of these scooter issues. We got one of those scooters. There was an accident today. We had that scooter, right? And we intend to deal with quite a number of them, right? Because I think everyone, including the police, seen who these riders are, right? And it's time some sort of action is taken. So we're working on it. That is something that you should expect some results in the coming weeks, all right? And if you don't, you can come back to me and remind me of what I said today,
All right, you can hold me to my word, but yeah, in the next 2 weeks, we're going to address specifically the scooters. All right.
Thank you. I think it's the scooters, the trucks, some of these vehicles who seem to have a band in the vehicle, ATVs on the road, the truck drivers who between the marina and the corner seem to feel the need to shift their gears like 5 or 6 times. And in addition to that, to pay attention to the persons who are taking trash up the mountain and the vehicles are not covered. I did just have one question before we move on to ask, how many vehicles does the police have in Tortola so that you seem to be without a vehicle up here and one can be put on the badge? I just thought I'd ask the question because you're saying this vehicle won't be available for another week. Just asking.
That's a good question. How much vehicles do we have, Sue? I can't answer that question.
1 year, is that?
In terms of numbers, I cannot say for sure the numbers. We do have that same problem on Tortola with vehicles. We do have a vehicle shortage. I know that there are some on order, and I do think we're going to get them right now. Again, it's according to government. So we have to wait.
So solution routes that needs to come under the recommendations that you maybe in the interest of transparency, and it's not, I like to say it's not political, but I am tired of protecting politicians. I received a message from the district rep at about 4:35 thereabouts to say he would not be attending the meeting, but he would like me to share the notes from the meeting with him. And I said to him, I will share the solutions, but really and truly, you should have been here. So I think the time for us to continue to protect persons and institutions that are supposed to be designed to protect us, that we have to collectively share our dismay in a very professional and respectful way. We will share the solutions. We will make our solutions public and go from there. There's a reason why I didn't take names. I decided on my own, and maybe I shouldn't have, because sometimes when we take down names, persons don't speak. I was asked why we didn't decide to make this virtual so that people in the community can listen in. Usually at 5:30 in the afternoon, most of us are home. 6:30 in the afternoon, most of us are home, are sitting in a bar somewhere, or the young people are on the basketball court or sitting somewhere on the side of the road. So if it is that you're really interested in your community, you have a responsibility to your community to be here. So infrastructural deterioration we'll talk about in the group, as well as island beautification. We bandied the island beautification about over and over and over again. So let's have some concrete solutions, like maybe one, calling out the Port Authority. The Port Authority is responsible for the planters that are close to Seoul. The planters have been broken, the bare bottles and everything. So we need to call out ports. Collectively a solution, get together with ports and say, look, fix this planter. Or an alternate solution, maybe one of the businesses, unfortunately, or the service groups adopt the planter in terms of beautification. And here I would just mention, somebody said, well, who took care of the planters before? Who took care of the murals before? The good thing was that I happened to be the director of tourism at that time and had a penchant for Gorda. So those things happen. We no longer have that cushion So sometimes things don't get done, so we have to find a way to get things done.
Can I quickly say something on beautification? I had a project that was a community beautification project. I had a lot of it was supposed to be a mural. I had all of the paints. One of the charitable organizations was going to pay for the design, which would showcase Gorda musicians over the years. The first wall, and I will be very clear, when I moved from where I was politically, the person that owned the wall said that they couldn't allow it to happen because I was no longer a part. We moved to the recreation grounds where we had to write a letter. Now this was going to involve the teachers at the school, Brigada Flats, as well as students in the community that were interested in art. When we wrote to the Recreation Trust to get permission, the director of the Recreation Trust came back and said, the representative for the district and his committee has said that it is not something that the community needs now.
Who's the committee?
You can ask me that, you got to ask him. But all I'm saying to say is that we have solutions, but how do we move them past all of the political rhetoric? Because a lot of things are blocked. They are blocked from happening because certain, I guess maybe I should do what Sharon did and just go up and start the painting the mural. And these are some of the things that are happening. Why does Public Works not have equipment? Sharon mentioned when we were the tourist board, we were buying cutlasses and hoes and picks and shovels and everything. We know what the solutions are, but how do we implement and execute solutions? Start paying the tax and use that money. That's what maybe needs to happen.
In the short, sometimes, what was it that I was also taught by my mother that there were about 26 letters in the alphabet and that you're really supposed to go A, B, C, D, E, F, and every once in a while you have to change the alphabet. So I would say as a quick solution, as I'm solutions oriented, I believe that there are a lot of other walls in the valley that are not necessarily public walls, walls that would brook some sort of an interference and still work to beautify. So I need to see that in the solutions. Youth enrichment, so we're going to move into the groups quickly. Youth enrichment, of course, is that's the buzzword. I keep hearing from mostly the politicians and some of the youths in saying that we need to do more for the youth, we need to encourage them, we need to find ways to keep them off the street, we need to find employment for them. What are the youth enrichment needs and what can we do as a community in terms of solutions for the youth? I tend to have very strong opinions when people are telling me that the youths go and rob and steal and all of this because they don't have anything to do. I didn't have anything to do either when I was that age, and you didn't see me running out going to steal ice cream from the spouter or breaking into somebody's home or whatever. So I firmly believe there needs to be a public service campaign as well too, not only by the police, but by the youth and by persons in the community to tell some of these young people to find work to do, because there's work to do. Chris knows, I hired 3, all of them I would say under 22, and I have none of them working for me right now. I either find them sitting down on a tree, or they're down on the beach, or they lip off the housekeeper, or whatever, and I've said to them, look, if you're not going to do what you're supposed to do, then you need to go home. So we need to look at solutions for the youth, but I'm not prepared to, as an individual and as a business, to babysit and model call young people underage.
Just for the record, Sharon invited you to come.
Sharon?
So, I said you invited me to come.
Yes.
So if I can't do it, choose your own call.
And no, and I invited you to come as an individual, not
Sure.
necessarily as a young.
But I think that a lot of times when we talk about young people and what young people are getting up to, we don't think about intersectionality and how certain things are affecting other things. Because the fact is, and I see this, I'm sure we had similar kind of upbringings, but the upbringing that you and I had is not the upbringing that a lot of the children that are involved in certain types of crime have. The upbringing that you and I have is not the upbringing of the children who are coming to your workplace and cannot maintain a job. So if we're treating the problem at the end of it and saying, well, let's give them a job, knowing fully well, because I think most of us know they will not function well. We have to start thinking about intersecting all year on, because a lot of the young people in the BK are fundamentally not being raised. And this is not our fault as business people, but I am very uncomfortable when we talk about young people and their failings without addressing the many failings of the people who are having these children. Because children cannot and do not raise themselves. And when people laud me, for example, for the way that I speak and the things that I have done, that is 100% because of the people that raised me.
And that's why I'm saying that we have a solutions group. And
Well,
maybe,
yes, but
maybe we need to find the solutions for the young people. And since it is that there needs to be an intercession all year, we have an educator in the room as well who may be able to come up with certain solutions so that the certain sectors of the young people do not resort to crime because we've not paid enough attention to them in their formative years. Church on Sunday, and the guest preacher had a very interesting message, and he actually spoke about young people, and he spoke about what's happening now. And I have to say that some of us as parents, we are the ones who have made some of these children the way that they are. We have, at least my generation, I said I never wanted my son to have to bring water from the well, to figure out how to flush a toilet with a bucket of water, and certain things. And some of us in this room and some of us in our community, we let our children sleep until whenever they feel like waking up. We let them stay up as long as they want to stay up. We let them play Xbox and all of these with all of these criminal-minded games and shooting and whatever. And we don't necessarily think of the consequences because we wanted our children to have a better life than we did. And instead of that happening, we've created lazy individuals and young people who seem to be and feel entitled. When I sent those two young men home, I have to admit, I lost my cool and I used a very bad word. And one of the young men went and complained me to his grandfather. The grandfather said to him, if Sharon Flax swear at you, then you deserve it fully. So I'm saying that sometimes we need to make those tough calls. We're going to break out into these three groups.
Okay, well, we all know why we are here. As you see here, our topic is crime and its solutions, and that is key in any community, because one of the things about, especially when it relates to our product, and we call it a product now because that's tourism. Tourism, as you know, if not the main revenue getter, it is one of the main. And so when people come to your country or your community and they feel safe, it is very important. One time I met a tourist and they asked me, is it okay? They were walking from the marina, go across to Rock Cafe, and they asked me, is it safe? I said the worst thing that can happen to you is somebody would stop and ask you if you need a ride. That's what Virgin Gorda community was all about. And so I want to keep it that way. So we are talking now in order to bring that back or to continue the peace that we have in Virgin Gorda here. Is first of all, we think that the police should be involved in more community patrols. And that is walking the street, as they say, a beat cop, or somebody who walks the street. The public see you, and they say, hey, the police coming in, like somebody's doing something, and it's by the police. That means a lot, especially if the police do it in such a professional way. 2, enforcement and fines, and we believe that some of the fines are too low. And we believe that it should be something that is progressive. So when you first time you commit a crime, that you're being fined for, the next time you commit a crime, the fine should increase. So that would be a deterrent. And so by doing so, people then will think twice before they go and commit that crime, which badly affects our community. Another thing, CCTV cameras in strategic areas that need to be looked at, and I think the police can look at that, but who else they want to include, and so forth. Number 4, funding and resources. Because without finance, without resources, the police cannot do their work effectively. And we think that is a very important factor in order for us to have effective police work and keeping our community safe. And one of the things that is most important in police community service, that has to do with public communication. And when we say public communication, the public is being able to say to the police, hey, in Handsomely there is something going on down here. A guy is breaking into somebody's house. You know, there's a saying, if you see something, say something. But when you say something, it must be confidential. Your informant should be anonymous. You shouldn't go there and say, Bobby Ross, just tell me, you break it. Because tomorrow you have a Barry Ross. Right? You don't want that. So that is basically a synopsis of what we think that we can do, and that should be done, and that we can improve upon.
So we were discussing infrastructure and beautification. I'm going to start with our first point. I know it may seem very bold, but I think it is, even if we do not approach it in totality, I think trying to approach it in principle is going to be very helpful. So what we have written here is independence for Virgin Gorda. And we, of course, were recommending looking at the Nevis model. Now, of course, and I know that Sharon really highlighted having conversations around quick wins, we may not be able to do that in and of itself, but I think the conversation of how to start getting government departments in particular to think about separating out Virgin Gorda from Tortola when you're doing things like budgets, when you're doing things like planning, when you're doing things like assessments, because invariably there's different need across the islands, and one of the major challenges I can say for a fact, having worked with government, is the fact that they tend to have a blanket approach when the communities that you're looking at are in fact very different. So again, independence I know seems a bit radical, but sometimes radical conversation is necessary. The second point that we have is assessment and report on the scale and impact. We were speaking in this instance specifically about the potholes, but this can be applied broadly, because where the conversation came up for us was, I think there are a lot of business people for whom a lot of the issues on the island are very topical because your guests are coming and reporting it to you, etc., etc. But for somebody, take like myself, who famously does not drive, how important are the potholes to me? So I think part of what we need to do is figure out a way to communicate to our community members the importance of the issues that we're facing. Why are the potholes important? Because this is the economic cost of them. And also because this is the guest experience and what is taken away from it, increasing the likelihood of these people not returning so that when your mother goes to Little Leagues, they have less and less money to pay her. Because I think a common misconception with community conversations is that if it matters to me, it matters to everybody else. But I'm sure nobody in this room cares as much as I do about the rights of disabled people because I have a disabled sister. And that's not an indictment. That's just human nature. There are things y'all care about that I'm like, okay. Like sometimes when y'all talk about the board schedule, I don't care, I don't go to Tatola. So I think trying to figure out a way to get everybody to understand what is actually the cost of these issues, particularly the infrastructure and the way that the island looks, what's it doing to our tourism in particular, and why is it costing us from an economic standpoint. We also have private group ownership and community service, which ties into that. So we were speaking about the fact that in the past, in many instances, you used to have individual groups, whether it was a business or a church or a school, taking responsibility for an area and trying to get as close to that model as we can. I think this is actually one of the more immediately doable things here because many of us in the room are business people, educators, etc. It would not be difficult for us to immediately, like tomorrow, Tyrone as a pastor, for example, decide we are going to take, and I think keep it manageable. Don't try to take the whole of the valley because that doesn't make sense. It could be as simple as me taking the area that belongs to my family. I could literally probably do that by myself. And if everybody starts thinking like that, and bigger groups, of course, churches, groups within the church, women's ministry, the men's ministry, I think we could really canvas the whole island very quickly. We also have beautification, competitions, yes. And I wrote this. Beautification competitions within communities. So this is the same principle really as number 3, but just trying to incentivize it. Can we find ways to actually, those same groups that have responsibility. So for example, I'll try to make it a concept really quickly. If you were to take the churches, each of the churches has responsibility for an area, and you incentivize it with a donation to a charity of their choice, for example, $2,000 that you source from business people, and the best cleaned area, the church that's responsible for that area, then gets to steward that donation. I think that'd be really exciting. And final point, because this supports all of it, we want to start thinking about community funds. So there are groups and individuals for whom the issues are most important because they actually use these assets more than the rest of us. I personally barely go to the beach, but there are some of us in the room who have villas and who have guests. So the beach is very important because it's a big part of how we make money. So are those people who are economically invested willing to in turn make small or large contributions back to some of these concepts? Even if a business decides I'm going to give $200 a month, that is that's $2,400 a year. And if 10 businesses do that, that's $25,000 slush fund basically. And it costs nothing for each of the people participating. You have families doing $50 a month, same thing. That could quickly add up to $100,000. And this is money that you could choose to fill the potholes in, if you choose to. You could choose to beautify spaces, you could choose to do a mural. And because you have money to pay people, it disallows a lot of the interference that we were speaking about. Also to buy cameras, to do internships, I'm jumping on an idea I heard you are talking about, etc., etc. So thank you very much, and I guess we will discuss further.
Okay, youth empowerment needs. When we look at the matter of youth empowerment, we need to look at how we're going to empower them, who is responsible for empowering them. We listed some resources here. Number 1, government, that little fellow there looking sad. Then we have the community. We also have businesses and individuals to empower the young people. So when we look at what government can do, government can offer apprenticeship, okay? And this, we label it under the head of education.
government can educate. Apprenticeship doesn't mean that that child failed, but what happens is a lot of our students in school are not academically inclined. Each child learns at its own pace. Some are gifted. My son is gifted, he can fix anything with computers, never went to a computer school. People are gifted in their area, and government can facilitate this by offering apprenticeship for them, okay? Where you can go, a person who's not interested in maths and English, you go to HLSCC or whatever and do that course. Because we also have internship. For example, Chris can offer a course in electrical engineering. Chris right there. Young people come and intern. I have done that with some boys in school. When I was there, they were not interested in anything called school. I made an agreement with the Yacht Harbor, and I sent some students down there to go and work in the holidays and something. But I tell them, if you're not coming to school, go there. I was able to get some people. So young people do need internship. This can help them and keep them out of trouble and all of that. Again, businesses can also offer scholarships. Right? It doesn't have to be where government alone or the OECS offers a scholarship. A business can say, hey, you're gifted in this area. I'll see that you finish HLSCC or finish this program online or whatever. Businesses can do that. And then we have individual. Mentorship is sadly lacking in our community, very sadly. Who mentors who? Do we take a little time with the young men and young ladies because they're at risk? Do we hire intentionally people who are at risk and try to help them be the best they can be? Right? We can do it intentionally, not by accident. Mentor some person. We have a lot of young men. I used to tell them, come, clean my car on Saturday, clean it. And then after, you see, but you didn't clean under the car. You have to clean it. When I put my hand there, then at the end of a month, I said, well, start your own business. I'll buy everything for you. But I was just sowing in their mind the idea that you can do it. But we can mentor them in many ways. Of course, they need spiritual mentorship, they need physical mentorship and all of that, and moral mentorship. Those guys at risk. They come, the big bikes and the drink and the smoke, the weed. That happens. This is the norm today. We also we are suggesting a model that we can consider for voting order. I've mentioned it before. I'll mention it again. We need to build our micro communities. Similar to what Leverett Bay has. Hanson Bay can be a micro community. I cannot deal with what happened in Taylor's Bay. I can't deal with it. I don't know people in Taylor's Bay like that. But I know everybody in Hanson Bay. I'm finishing in 1 minute. Okay? So in a micro community, we can build programs. We can get business people. Build one basketball hoop. One. Get the young people there. We can have our own community social. A community fair day where everybody comes out and sells stuff. In a micro community, we can do that. But we need to have to be creative in how we look at life. Government cannot do everything. Are done.